It's not that we're trying to save the world. It's not that we're trying to reinvent all small group practices, because there are many others that would perhaps work equally well. It's just that it is a little bit of a formula that we've come up with. And I'd like to just kind of walk through it a minute quickly, because how many of you actually enjoyed the estuary experience yesterday, the way we did it when you first came in, by a show of hands? Okay, so that was helpful. It helped you get to know each other a little bit, feel a little bit connected with other people before you sat down in this auditorium. So that's actually kind of a valid and important thing altogether for anyone, to be seen, to be known, to be heard, and to have a chance to let other people know who you are. I have a friend, I think he's sitting back there somewhere. I have a friend who once, him and I did a storytelling event in town here, and he did the introductions, and then he would say, he would say to the audience, you guys are the most important part of this event, because stories mean nothing unless there are people to hear them. And then he would say, listen very carefully. The listening part is a humongously important part of this exercise. And so I say the same thing about estuary, that the most important contribution you can make is to listen well to other people. And he would say something kind of funny, that he would say, some of these people that get up here to talk, and we're going to give them 6 minutes to talk, and for some of them, those 6 minutes are the first 6 minutes in their life that they were able to tell a story without being interrupted. So also true for some of us, I'm sure. And in a way, that's kind of what we try to do in estuary. We try to give people an opportunity to tell their story. There's something very democratic about estuary. We like to people to be able to say who they are, where they came from, how they got here, and why they're here. And then in our regular estuary meetings, the way we do it is we together put a topic on the table. And I always preface that by saying, you can put that in one of 4 categories. You can share something with the group that falls under intellectually, some book you may have read, or a story you've read, or a podcast you've heard, or a video you've watched, something that kind of stimulated your mind and got your juices going and got you thinking about stuff. And that's an important contribution. That's a good place to start. But you also live in a context, and sometimes your mind is more occupied with things that happen around you than the things that you've read. And so the things that happen around you contextually would be such things as some items in the news, political developments, court cases, earthquakes, floods, crimes, major accidents that happen in your neighborhood. And these are things that make the headlines in the newspaper, and you can't pretend that they aren't there. So for some of us, those are the things that occupy our mind. And then thirdly, personally. Again, I really appreciated what John said about the caring part. And so we invite people to share if they recently had a baby, or moved to a new house, or got fired from their job, or got a new wife, or a new baby, or grandma died, or whatever the personal thing was that really kind of shook you up and occupied your mind. It was maybe even a traumatic thing. And that doesn't mean that we're going to make that the topic of conversation, but it's good for other people to know what your actual personal situation is as they sit in the circle. It's kind of a good thing to be aware of that about each other. And then finally, the 4th item that is always up for discussion, because this is not a tyranny, it is the estuarily point. So that if you don't like that the chairs are standing in a circle and you would like them in a square, now is the time to bring that up. If you don't like the refreshments, feel free to comment on that. And if you want to depose the leader and get a new one, now would be the time to do that. So four things: intellectually, contextually, personally, and estuarily. And when you give people a framework within which to share, usually it's a little bit easier for them to kind of take inventory in their mind and see what is salient on that day and in that moment. And then give people the opportunity to put that on the table as a potential topic for conversation. Now, no one is required to do that. In my group, you can always pass. But you're not excused from listening carefully, because then, after everyone has put their topic on the table, and everybody has listened very carefully to what each person was saying, then we're going to go around the room one more time. And then nobody is excused, nobody gets to pass. Because then we say, hey, of all the things that are on the virtual table, in the middle of the room, what he said really resonated with me, or what she said really resonated with me. And I thought it was really interesting when he or she brought that up. It made me think about what he said, and those two things kind of go together. And so you try to find out if there is a convergence of topics in the room, and as you go around, you kind of begin to get a sense, hey, this particular topic struck a chord with all of us. And that's when you have discovered the spirit or the angel in the room. And then in a very natural, organic way, you have the topic for the remainder of your time together, and you can actually have a meaningful conversation tuned into the needs of the group on that day. Now, what is the alternative to that is somebody, perhaps myself, comes in with the prepared agenda, and I tell everybody what we're going to discuss, and here are the 3 points that I want to make, and we're going to discuss it on these terms, and I've wrote down some questions, give me the answer to the questions, and you wonder why you're there. The Estuary Protocol enables each person to find their own voice, make their own contribution, and to really tune in to the other people that are in the room before the conversation even starts. So that's why we practice the Estuary Protocol. Now, the next question is, where does all this take place? Well, it takes place wherever somebody has decided in real life, in a real community, to organize an estuary meeting. And so we have one here in Chino. How many of you raise your hand if you are within a half an hour of this church? All right. I had the thank you for raising your hand. I had the amazing good fortune a few weeks ago to I think we had 14 people show up at my estuary a couple nights in a row, and I looked around the room and I said, you know, there are 5 people here, all of whom drove between between an hour and a half and 2.5 hours to get here. And they all came from the same area out west, out there by Los Angeles and the other side of Los Angeles and places beyond. And I said, you guys are crazy for driving here. You could start your own estuary with 5 people to start without driving anywhere at all. So why don't you do that? So they're working on that. I'm kind of encouraged by that. Mind you, I was also encouraged by the fact that at the next meeting, 3 of those people were again in Chino. Relationships had been built. Connections had been made. People were still willing, even with the opportunity of something closer to home, they were still willing to go out of their way to have an honest and open conversation with other people whom they could trust to do good listening, excellent listening. The key to good estuary is excellent listening. Anyway, back to where all these things actually take place. Is there a slide that has estuaryhub.com? Maybe, Tim, can you put that on right now? So one thing that I have done is I have tried to train maybe upward of by now approximately 100 people in the last 2.5 years to become leaders of Estuary. And right now, quite a few of those are sitting here among you. So would you please stand up if you're an ELSNet leader? All right. And these people, please sit down. These people, they know the Estuary Protocol, and most of them have already begun to run a group in their own community. There's a estuary in various parts in the country that are run by these guys. There's some other people that are aspiring estuary leaders. What that means is that they're eager to get a group started, but there aren't enough people in their immediate surroundings to get it going. So for that reason, we started estuaryhub.com. I don't know if that link works for you on your phones right now, but feel free to go there. What that is, it's a way that we can connect estuary leaders with estuary people. In other words, if you are all from Maine, I think there are several people here from Maine or New England. I don't know how big is New England? About as big as Southern California, something like that? No? Okay. So it's probably too far to everybody meet in Boston, right? Okay, that's not happening. Whitensville, yeah. So anyway, but the point is that if this thing is going to grow, we need leaders to be able to start groups in their local community. And so here I am very eager to recruit maybe upward of 20 more people who are willing to participate in ELSNet to become leaders of an estuary group in your own community. And then the other thing that Estuary Hub will do is will enable people who just hear through the grapevine that this thing is happening. They can go to Estuary Hub and find out if there is an estuary group near them, and then they can find out, where that's meeting and at what time and whenever, and so that can become a kind of a connection point and an easy way to contact the leaders and to keep this thing growing. When Paul and I first started talking about estuary, he said, it is not going to grow from the top down. It has to grow from the bottom up. It has to grow organically where people feel a need. So there is no such thing as Estuary Inc., contrary to the opinion of some. There's only the challenge for me to let you know that there are resources available to become more familiar with the Estuary Protocol. I only see it as one tool in somebody's pocket to run these groups, because there are other ways of doing it that work perhaps just as well. But it's good for a small group leader to have one tool in their back pocket, and the Estuary Protocol seems to be it. So, yeah, if you are even remotely interested in the idea of starting a group in your own vicinity, it's all doable. I mean, there are guys that are running multiple groups. Joe is one of them, back, I don't know where he's at, but back there. Joe has only been involved in this thing for a year, but he runs multiple groups already, and he has a friend down in northern Indiana who has also 3 groups going already, so it's doable. Anyway, if you are at all interested in doing that, I'd like you to go to this thing and sign yourself up as an aspiring leader, become part of the ELSNet leadership network community, and what we do is we meet twice a month online, go to a few sessions, have some conversation about how to do things, learn some tricks and tips and tricks of the trade, and you too can have an estuary group in your town. And what else am I forgetting? All right, so then Catherine suggested that I take a little bit of time to entertain some questions about this thing. Okay. You're going to host that? Okay. So do I stay here or do I sit down? You sit right there. Okay.
So the next hour and 40 minutes we're going to be speaking with we will be speaking with the speakers. But it goes directly then after that into another dialogue. So, don't feel like you need to stay here for the whole time. It's a lot of talking at the front. So, John is going to be up here with me for like 9 minutes. But then it will be John Vervaeke at 2 until 2:30, Paul from 2:30 till 3, and Jonathan Peugeot from 3 to 3:30. So you speakers don't have to be here the whole time. If it's not your time, take a break. Same goes for you. If it's a topic or a group that's interesting to you, be here or don't be here, because then immediately after, without a break, then we're into the next conversation. So, can we have Aaron come up? He had a question for John.
And it works. Great. So I mean this as respectfully as possible. I can't get over how surprised people are that Estuary works. And let me back into what I'm trying to say. So I spend a lot of time in the virtual world, but also in a deeply analog world. Like I develop stuff for virtual reality, but I also go to like the high deserts. I was just there a few days ago and teach primitive skills. And first I want to say I appreciate what you're doing. Not only the fact that you're doing it, but the pedagogy of practice, you're expanding. And I deeply believe you should go where the people are and try and meet them where they're at. And I engage in what I guess you could call a form of estuary. And I swear I'm getting to a question. And I talk to people quite a lot. And I would say I talk to people who are looking for spiritual homes. And I know I look like a shaman, but I don't want to be anyone's guru. But I find that people are looking for leadership and guidance constantly. You find a lot of service members who are struggling. They're playing video games all day. Maybe they have physical injuries. A lot of them have wounds in their heart. And they spend a lot of time online. The Discord community is really interesting because a young lady said to me, I think she was in Australia somewhere, and she spends a lot of time in VR. She goes, Discord makes the internet feel local. And people are finding each other in this virtual space. And then I go to I was just there a few days ago, the high desert, and you have a community of people who spend a week together learning things like tracking and primitive fire, and then they find a community, and they're from all over the world. And people are finding each other, and then they engage in this practice, this ritual, where they're together and they speak truthfully to each other. But they don't have the structure you just laid out. For example, structure. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here. So I guess the question is something like, what do you say when people are trapped physically or isolated and they jump dimensions? Because we're here partly because we met on the internet, and now we're here. And people very casually criticize virtual reality, but young people are finding each other there. People are finding each other all over. I would be interested to hear someone who's doing the work of bringing people together, your perspective on that. I hope that was a good question.
Excellent question. And it's, is this thing on? So I just had that conversation with Rick, because Rick says, John, she says, how come you never talk about what I did on the Discord to create the local estuary Discord server section thing? And maybe we should ask Rick what I said, but I said, Rick, we can have that conversation, but I don't think I'm going to do that. And the reason being that I myself feel that the in-person, face-to-face conversations have a leg up on what's happening online. But that doesn't mean that there is no place for an online community. That would have to be organized and structured and given some similar guidelines, perhaps, from what we do on the ground. In the online community, it's just that I don't want to be part of it.
Right. Well, this is why I kind of want to sneak a priest in with me, because when I talk about virtual reality, I don't mean just say like put on a goggle and like you put full body tracking, and this is both like a benefit but also like a curse, because those people who are socially awkward out in the analog world, they don't get to hide behind a keyboard anymore. Like if my body language now, if I just started doing one of these to you, you're going to see that. And the embodiment, like 80% or whatever the percentage of communication is nonverbal, right? Well, I think we've crossed the uncanny valley. Now it's more human. The technology is bringing people together and making each other more human. We're in this weird space for a while, and in some ways we're still kind of there, where we depersonalize people and all. But when you put on, it's quite effortful. You put on a full suit with and you have to deal with LiDAR and all sorts of stuff. The people who are doing this are seeking community, and they want to be embodied. They just don't know how. And like you're talking about creating communities. I really think we need people with enough courage, and you seem like someone who's courageous, to step into that world. Because there's people there. They're not avatars or just YouTube comments. Some of these younger people in particular have been locked down, quite literally told you're not allowed to be or to join a community. And they found each other somehow. I could tell some other stories about that. I don't want to take up too much time. There's a real need. There's a very acute need. And people need, I think John Vervaeke said, an ecology of practices. And they're embodied in a weird trans-dimensional way. It's their body, but it's not their body.
I actually think that you just created a great opportunity, because I am pretty sure there is somebody sitting in this audience right now who is completely intrigued by what you said, Aaron, and who would love to be that person to bring some kind of ecology of practices to the community that you describe. So let me see some hands here. Anybody? Right there. There's several hands right there. So, yeah, I would say there's your guy right there.